body, let's go and step it body, let's go and step it body, step it body, step it body. Strike back, get them out of your way. Don't care if along the way the little sacrifice. Strike back, get them out of your way. Listen to your heart, let the voice in your head. Get them out of your way. If along the way's a little sacrifice. Strike back, get them out of your way. Don't melt in the world, find your way.
Versus Saxton Hale is now an official game mode for TF2, revamped and rejuvenated thanks to the power of VScript and ready to be reintroduced to the public. If you're a fresh lamb for the Saxton Slaughter or even a Saxton Hale savant, this is the video for you, as it will hopefully answer all your questions about VScript versus Saxton Hale from the barebone basics to superior Saxton strategies. Starting with the simple,
what is VScript versus Saxton Hale?
Versus Saxton Hale, or VSH for short, is a spin-off of the arena game mode. Red and blue teams must fight to the death without any respawns available. The big twist though, is that blue only has one member, a supercharged Saxton Hale. Thankfully, red has a handful of buffs and bonuses to help kill the boss as well. By killing all members of the opposing team, or by being a coward and capping the control point, you win.
What is VScript versus Saxton Hale?
There are two different versions of versus Saxton Hale, the plugin version and the VScript version. Plugin Saxton can only be played on community servers hosting that plugin, while VScript Saxton is directly tied into the map's code. Plugin Saxton features several basic bosses like the Headless Horse's Horseman, the Easter Bunny, and of course Saxton Hale, while VScript Saxton only features Saxton Hale as a boss. However, he's overhauled to the max, having several unique abilities. Plugin Saxton games are a lot slower with larger and much more open maps. VScript Saxton games move much faster, with their maps being a lot more compact. There are many more changes and differences between the two, primarily when it comes to weapon balancing, but if you're interested in plugin Saxton Hale, I recommend taking a look at this video instead.
Why is the cap locked?
Although both Hale and the mercenaries can win by capping the control point in the center of the map, by default it's locked for the first 4 minutes of the match. This is to actually allow people to verse Saxton Hale and versus Saxton Hale. Both teams really shouldn't cap the point itself in like 90% of circumstances, as it's considered poor play. This is Saxton Hale we're talking about, okay? We fight in this game, take your capping ass back to King of the Hill.
Why is my melee crit boosted?
With the exception of Spy, the Holiday Punch, and the Market Gardener, all melee weapons get free critical hits to reward people suicidal enough to go hand to hand against Hale. There's some other benefits that melee weapons have too, such as increased deployment speed and increased range when near Hale, but the increased melee range can be extremely useful for escaping Hale if he's hunting you down.
How the hell are people flying around?
One of the other big changes and improvements to versus Saxton Hale is melee wall climbing. By simply hitting any surface with your melee, you'll be hoisted up into the air, reaching new heights. You can perform these wall jumps a maximum of 3 times, with each successive hit becoming weaker and weaker. After the third hit, however, you'll barely gain any height at all. Mastering this melee movement is the key to success in Saxton Hale. A lot of new players are either oblivious or quite forgetful about its existence, so here's that sticky note to put on your fridge, reminding you about it.
What class is the best?
Well, I'd have to say...
What weapons are meta?
Oh, definitely
How do I become Hale?
Just luck, really.
Why do I have mini crits? Is the Voxinator any good? What does Hale want to rock, paper, scissors? Why did I get kicked for capping?
Sweet Jesus on a sugar-coated strawberry sundae, just shut up for a second, please. There is a lot to go over and get through within this game mode, especially when it comes to the classes. Some weapons have chain stats, some loadouts don't work, and some strategies are just straight up stupid. Starting with Scout and ending with Spy, this section of the video will detail what each class's role is within the game mode, what weapons work, and how you can maximize their effectiveness.
You might be fast, but you can't outrun my fists.
Scout excels at harassing Hale. His low damage output but high mobility means he can chase Saxton anywhere and everywhere, inflicting chip damage and ruining his chance for a quick rest. Just be careful around Saxton. Your low health makes you vulnerable to his punches, charges, shockwaves, slams, and supers. The best way to play Scout, I find, is by using your tankier teammates as shields when Saxton is nearby, firing behind them for okay damage, and chasing after Hale when he super jumps or charges away, dealing decent damage while he's distracted. Quick hit and run tactics in and outside of Hale's range also works pretty well, but are extremely risky. At the start of rounds, you'll speed past Saxton, but the less health he has, the faster he gets. He'll only ever be able to outrun you when his health gets to 25% of his health. Thankfully though, you do have a double jump and wall climbs to juke out Hale vertically instead of horizontally. Scout's weapons are all atrociously annoying to fight against though as Hale, the stock scattergun and backscatter being the only exceptions to that rule, as both are unchanged in their premise and execution. The shortstop with its tighter spread and better range makes it the premier primary pick I find. Hale moves quickly, and although Scout can keep up with him fairly well, but sometimes the distance is just too great, and a weapon that reliably deals damage without putting you at risk is another plus. The soda popper can be a tad bit useful against Hale, but that's only if you have hype available. Its faster firing speed and damage output is pretty solid when you can get near Saxton, but it really does just exist as a free getaway for Scout with his 5 extra jumps. Combine that with the Atomizer, Scout's natural double jump, and the melee wall climb ability, and you technically have access to 10 whole jumps. The Force of Nature surprisingly got buffed in this game mode. Having slightly increased knockback when close to Hale, this may be annoying to fight against, but it's even more annoying to play with. Knocking Hale into teammates, causing them to be killed instead of you. If you plan on using this, just be careful of your team and surroundings. There's a very good reason why the Babyface Blaster is banned in normal plug-in Saxton. Boost can be filled extremely easily, making you impossible to catch while on the ground. It's the best scout weapon for hit and run tactics, especially since the only way to lose boost is by double jumping, something you can avoid completely thanks to wall climbing. You might be faster than Hale on the ground, but keep an eye and ear out for when he's in the air. His slams, charges, and such will hit you and reduce your boost. Scout's secondaries also provide excellent cover as counters to a variety of the issues and problems you can expect to come across. The stock pistol certainly isn't the flashiest option available, but it does get the job done, hitting Hale from afar when no other option is available. The Winger's extra jump height and damage boost makes it a top choice if you like playing in and around Hale, the jump height increase being extremely useful for juking Hale out or escaping him. The Pretty Boy pocket pistol is a bit more preferable for long-term survival though, negating the damage you take from Saxton's slams, charges, and fall damage. It's kinda useless though if you have a decent medic, or engineer, or even Mad Milk, but it's still usable. Speaking of, wouldn't it be amazing to give health to not just yourself, but everyone on your team? The fact that everyone's shooting at only one guy makes healing everyone pretty easy thanks to Mad Milk. Bonk Atomic Punch requires way too much to make it work. You could use it to ensure an escape from Saxton, but that's only really worth doing if you're in an enclosed space. Someplace Scout should never really be in to begin with. Also, I have seen people pretend to be human shields with it, blocking Saxton from hitting anyone else, and denying his super punches, but this kinda doesn't work as you'll just be knocked back right away and become an easy pick right after it wears off. The ability to remove Saxton's super punch is nice, but it's kind of not really well done on Scout. Classes like Spy, Demo, and even Medic do a much better job at negating that. Criticola though is by far the best option if you want to up your damage output. The increased damage and lack of fall off makes hurting Hale from anywhere a breeze. Being marked for death while under the effects also means very little since you'll die to a singular punch anyways, and you just need to be aware of Saxton's slam attacks. Never use the Flying Guillotine. It's nearly impossible to hit Hale with, and the bleed damage it does deal is like giving him a nosebleed rather than a cut to a carotid artery. Melee weapons don't matter too much in this game mode, although I would say that utility melees are better than offensive ones. The Boston Basher is a good example of this. Sure, if you can get near Hale, the crit bleed damage can cause some damage to him, but missing set hit also hurts like hell. Generally not worth the risk. Especially when the Rap Assassin does the same thing but from afar, meaning you don't need to get up close to Hale. It's also important to note that Saxton's charge will remove any debuffs like Bleed, Girardi, or Mad Milk, so don't bother lining up Boston's or Baubles when he's charging it up. The Fan of War is another melee weapon capable of inflicting a status to Saxton. The marked for death status is unique because it won't be removed during Saxton's charge, making it ideal for not just maximizing your damage, but the team's too. It's a bit risky trying to get in close to hit Hale, but thankfully the fan does have increased range when next to him. 15 whole seconds of increased damage is incredibly strong, and it's felt throughout the entire game, unlike something else like the Sydney Sleeper or Girardi. The Atomizer is a decent escape utility tool for escaping Hale. I already mentioned the massive amount of movement you get from wall climbing, a double jump, and then a triple jump on top of that. It's ideal for juking Hale, but you won't really see too much practical use out of it compared to some other options. The Candy Cane could be an alright choice. It gives you free health kits upon hitting Hale with it. The healing is weaker than Mad Milk's and riskier though, so I wouldn't recommend using it unless you plan on going full on support scout. Ah, the Sandman. Now you might be thinking, I can slow down Saxton with one solid strike without any suffering, and soon my teammates will swarm him. Hitting Hale with slowdown can be huge, as it does allow everyone to get easy hits on him or make an escape. But there's still a massive problem with the Sandman though. Its slowdown only works with low-skilled Saxton players. For those who don't know, you can side strafe while under the effects of slowdown and completely negate it. So a weapon that only really works when fighting someone you could already beat. Outside of that, you're just giving yourself a negative 10 HP loss. The Sun on a Stick is actually really important in this game mode, guys. Having it equipped gives Scout SPF 8, meaning he won't die from sunburn because he's so freaking weak.
Is that a shovel or an oversized spoon?
Soldier can fit or bend to any role that you like thanks to his high mobility, high health, high damage output, and weapon selection, but all at a significant cost. Soldier's mobility is limited by his health. Have too little health for a rocket jump, and you're a sitting duck. Soldier's health allows him to barely take a single hit from Saxton, leaving him at 5 HP. But that ability to take a punch is limited by his mobility. Soldier's rockets can deal good damage and knockback to Hale, but good luck trying to hit him with a projectile. His flexible nature to fit into any role seems to typically be outclassed by classes that specialized into those exact same roles. A Master of None is certainly not better than a Master of One. Soldier's rocket launchers are all fairly interchangeable with one another like in normal TF2. Stock is your go-to general gun. As a nice tip, I recommend you always having at least one rocket ready to go. You never know when Hale might turn his attention to you, and you don't want to get caught without a jump to safety. The black box trades offensive power and mobility in exchange for increased survivability from blast jumps and Hale's abilities thanks to his health on hit. The rocket jumper has quite a few synergies with secondaries and melees, notably the Market Gardener. It has a small nerf attached to it, which just nerfs the amount of reserve ammo it can carry to prevent you from stalling out games by constantly running away. The direct hit? More like the direct shit. Heyo, never heard that one before, did ya? The Cow Mangler is a direct upgrade from stock. Even without having infinite ammo, the fact it can do massive damage directly and over time to Hale makes it extremely powerful. Just don't charge the beam when Saxton is charging you. I hate the Beggar's Bazooka for the same reason I hate random bullet spread. I like my bullets to go where I'm aiming. Missing a rocket on someone as speedy as Saxton after waiting a couple seconds to reload is bad enough, but doing it 3 times after several seconds is just agony. The fact you also need to preemptively load a rocket to make a quick escape doesn't help it either. I'm sure there's some defensive niche for it, such as turtling with engineers where the accuracy and timing of the rockets doesn't matter at all, but it sucks. The airstrike is a rather unique choice. Its offensive power is immense, especially when no one can shoot you out of the sky, just be careful of the landing. Dealing 250 damage to Hale will reward you with an additional rocket to even further boost your damage potential. Because you'll be rocket jumping around a lot more though, you'll need to also stop for health kits more, leaving you incredibly vulnerable to a slam, punch, or charge from Saxton. I'm at liberty to say that the Liberty Launcher is my go-to rocket launcher. It may not pack a punch offensively, but the sheer mess of upsides it has makes it a rather diverse launcher fitting into a lot of loadouts. The extra rocket means you'll always be able to store one for a quick escape, and the reduced self-damage means it won't hurt as much to do so. The faster projectile speed can also be pretty handy for hitting Hale. The Liberty Launcher works wonders with the Marking Gardener without making you solely reliant on the melee for damage too. Alright, let's just be honest with one another here. Man to man, you're never going to use a shotgun on Soldier, so we're just going to skip over them. The gunboats, though, have always been a staple for Soldier, and it's no different in versus Saxton Hale. Smart Saxton players will know soldiers can't rocket jump forever and chase them as they try and rocket jump away until they die from their own rocket, fall damage, or make a mistake and get served by Saxton like a sizzling sirloin steak. The gunboats minimize the damage you take and maximize the jumps you can make. At its worst, it'll do nothing but delay the inevitable, but those delays have a chance to turn into Saxton saviors, with health kits respawning, a medic reaching you, or Hale losing you completely. The man treads and base jumper try and mimic the gunboat success, but to no real avail. Using the base jumper might negate the fall damage you take completely, but at the cost of making you a sitting duck for Saxton to swipe and strike. I wouldn't recommend using it unless playing on Distillery, a large map with a massively high skybox and tall buildings to jump off of. The man treads are a more offensive choice that only really works with the Market Gardener. It's the increased air control and stomps excel at making sure you hurt Hale while reminiscing about the good old Goomba Stomp plugin. The banners at first glance might seem to be the perfect support tool for the entire game, buffing people offensively, defensively, and mobility-wise against Saxton Hale while even providing passive effects to Soldier 2. The buff banner grants midi crits, allowing people to deal massive damage to Hale. The Contra heals them and speeds them up, allowing them to not just dodge any Saxton slams or supers if they do get hit, but they can also simply heal right away from the damage too. Plus, the passive health regen is perfect for healing against them as well, and for extending the amount of rocket jumps you can do. The battalion's backup's damage negation ensures lighter classes and you can survive Saxton face to face, thanks to its 35% damage resistance. The 20 extra health is also nice. Doesn't do much, but it is there, you know. But get those gears going and grinding for a second. Why do the banners actually suck? Unlike other effects like Girardi, Mad Milk, or Marked for Death, the banners follow Soldier, not Saxton, meaning Soldier has to be both near teammates and alive for the effects to occur, which is something Hale can very easily undo. That's also assuming you can get the banner charge in the first place due to how hard it is to hit Hale as he jumps around the entire map. Even in that case, if you manage to get a charge and use it while surrounded by teammates, nothing really stops Saxton from just leaving and coming back when the effect ends. The Righteous Bison? Damn! Soldier's melees are definitely the most unique in this game mode. They all have a solid niche in Soldier's set, specializing in offense, defense, or support without any real downside, unlike his banners. The escape plan excels at escaping, obviously. Taking too much damage from your own jumps or Saxton can be a death sentence for Soldier, as said before. You end up moving at a snail's pace, all while a cheetah chases you down. The escape plan rectifies that by allowing you to close the distance between you and that health kit without getting killed. Its increased movement speed also allows you to run in and out of Saxton's own melee range with just enough skill, knocking him back with a well-timed swing to buy you even more time. I'll talk more about the Hasatuichi when we reach demo since he benefits a lot more from it, but it's still a fairly decent melee option for Soldier 2. This increased range means you can always wall climb without needing to slow down and crouch, and the overheal you get on hit is perfect for tanking additional hits. The disciplinary action might seem like an odd choice since it requires you to be near teammates at all times to work, with the speed boost being fairly negligible on all classes but heavy. At best though, it can buy you a second or two when up against Saxton. The disciplinary action has the longest range out of all melee weapons, even longer than Saxton Hale's own fists. This fun little stat means that while you can hit Hale, he can't hit you. The melee knockback sends him a bit away, Hale rushes at you again, he tries to punch you, but you can simply hit farther and sending him back to square one. The extra range can also be used to hit walls or floors from further away, allowing for easy escapes, particularly right after smacking Saxton. The Market Gardener, however, is on a whole other level, uniquely being one of 2 non-spy weapons to not be crit boosted, and for obvious reasons. Market Gardening Hale, while risky, pays off in dealing an absurd amount of damage, which scales based on player count. The wall climb ability also means that even if you initially miss the garden, you could salvage it by hitting a wall quickly, regaining altitude, and serving that spoon into Saxton's skull. If you plan on using the Pain Train to increase your cap speed when the point opens up, as it is a technical direct upgrade for stock, do be aware that I will stop at no ends to hunt you and your loved ones down. There will be no mercy, no salvation, and in the moment where you pass from the living to the dead, there will be no light to welcome you. Nothing but a vast, infinite, eternal void filled with your sins. So don't use the Pain Train.
You fight like a woman!
Pyro excels in interrupting Hale and saving teammates from would-be deaths. He has a couple other gimmicks lined in that fireproof suit of his, but he's best played as a support. His biggest downsides are how close he needs to get to Hale and his somewhat low damage output. Air Blast is an extremely powerful tool capable of shutting down Hale's attacks and rampage. Hale charging towards you, Air Blast. Hale about to slam down and scatter everyone around, Air Blast. Hale about to punch and kill a medic, Air Blast. Since Hale was completely overhauled, feel free to Air Blast him away to your heart's content without getting yelled at. Just make sure you actually push him away from teammates and not into them. Several maps have environmental death pits that players can fall into, including Hale. It won't insta-kill him, but it will deal a significant amount of damage. Distillery has a grinder in the back, Skirmish has a crocodile pit in one of the spawn areas, and Nucleus's is, well, pretty obvious. I've seen a couple Pyro players think that they can easily knock Hale into them, spending all their time camping around near them. This is stupid. Air Blast only works defensively, not offensively. Pyro's offensive capabilities as a whole are very underwhelming. The flamethrowers don't deal a lot of damage even with Afterburn because Saxton Hale is already on fire. He's the hottest thing since the fucking sun. Even if Pyro did deal decent damage, the risk you put yourself at getting that close to Hale generally isn't worth it. Scout has the speed to get away, Soldier and Demo can blast jump, and Spy can turn invisible. Pyro has his Air Blast, which is a great tool for pushing Hale back, but only for a couple of seconds. If you're caught out alone with no one to help distract Hale, you'll quickly run out of ammo to Air Blast with. I don't really have much to say about Pyro's flamethrower since they're all the same with minor differences. Use Stalk if you like the Air Blast a lot. Use the Degreaser for quick melee wall climbs and combos. Don't use the Backburner though. Reason being that the Flog, despite an immense amount of issues with it, consistently outdamages it. The lack of Air Blast means you have to be extremely careful when trying to build up oomph. Any mistake made will be your last. And even when you get oomph and use it, you still have to be careful. Your damage output might be extremely high, but you can still only be one shot by Hale. Typically Hale will also run or just jump away the moment he sees your Flog Flash crits, and this scared Saxton might be annoying at first, but recall it keeps everyone else near you safe and sound. The Flog has another fun trick though, called oomph cancelling. We all know that when you activate oomph, I'm getting tired of saying that, you're stuck taunting for a moment while Ubered. But what if there is a way to keep the Uber and crits, but not be stuck taunting? With good timing, activating oomph at the moment Hale is about to hit you with any of his abilities will knock you back and out of the taunt, still Ubered, for a few seconds with crits. This is obviously easier said than done, however. Hale might miss, change target, or simply delay his attacks until you're done taunting. If you want to avoid being put at risk as Pyro, play a different class. Or use the Dragon's Fury. While still needing you to be close to Saxton to work, you don't need to be that close. Its damage, while nothing to really note, is still a step above other flamethrowers when hitting Hale in rapid succession. You also still have Air Blast, as janky as it may be with the Dragon's Fury. For secondaries, we have the shotguns. Who cares? The flare guns are the real star secondaries here, aside from the Man Melter, of course. The stock flare gun may be hard to aim and hit Hale with, but a direct crit hit with it surely packs a punch. Capable of sending Hale backwards from its knockback, the knockback can be used to save someone here and there, but the damage it causes is the main takeaway, making a damage-focused flare. The Squirt Shot is the support focus flare. Directly hitting Hale stops him from moving for a handful of seconds, being stun locked by the Squirt Shot. On average, you'll typically deal more damage with the Squirt Shot than the flare gun, but that's just because of how much easier it is to hit Hale with. Then we have the Detonator, which focuses on Pyro's mobility. The wall climb melee ability makes it partially redundant in my eyes, especially since Pyro can't really chain a super hard hitting attack into the end of it like Trollger can, but I can argue it helps Pyro both stay near and away from Hale easier. It's probably the second weakest mobility option in the game, but seeing how Pyro only gets the option of this, or the Thermal Thruster, it's pretty okay. Speaking of the Thermal Thruster, it makes it extremely easy to get into fights as Pyro, jumping in from above with the flamethrower at the ready, catching Hale off guard while you'll do like 200 damage to him. And then he turns around and you can't jetpack Joyride out of it, and you die. Maybe it's not that good. However, there is some potential with it, which is how it expands on the ability to flog and flog cancel. Land on Hale with oomph, taunt, and watch as you gain full Uber crits while directly beside the boss. Definitely the worst mobility option in the game, but beggars can't be choosers. The melee wall climb also means it's a bit easier to get distance with it. Hey, so this is me in the future. By the time I've re-recorded this bit, I've edited all the way up to Spy, and then I kind of remembered, oh yeah, the Gas Passer. That's a weapon. Genuinely forgot that it existed. Let's keep it that way, it doesn't do anything. Pyro's melees seem to be the biggest trap for new players. They lure you in with bright blue text and hardly any meaningful downsides at a glance. But those downsides are quite costly in reality. Most of them, like the Third Degree, Neon Annihilator, and Homewrecker, have zero function within the game mode, which makes the other options a lot more tantalizing. Take, for example, the Back Scratcher. People look at that 244 damage crit and think it's the best. Even if Saxton slams them away, they'll easily get back to full health with one medkit thanks to that 50% health increase. But let's look at some other melee weapons, the Eyelander and Zatoichi. Although not dealing as much damage, greatly boosting the survivability of Demo and Soldier, allows for more hits and more mistakes. The Market Gardener, although requiring you to get up close and personal with Hale, can deal a whopping 700 damage. And then you can swap back to a launcher to jump away. Spies and Eyes are in a similar vein. Melee weapons can't put you at immense risk without having some way to decrease that risk. The Back Scratcher allows you to get one good hard hit in, and that's it. It doesn't do anything else. Can you use it? Of course, but if you're going to hit Hale with a melee, why not do it as Spy, Soldier, or Demo? Classes that can escape Saxton easier or tank a punch if needed. The Extinguisher is the complete opposite, however. Instead of being a high damage weapon with zero escape potential, it's a low damage weapon with some escape potential. It's crit boosted by default, so hitting Hale while on fire won't provide any extra damage, just a speed boost. Useful for getting out of someplace quickly, hit Hale and run for the hills. But the fact you extinguish Hale means you lower your damage output altogether. Plus, there's the fact you still need to hit Hale at all to get use out of it. Thankfully, the Power Jack still reigns supreme. The passive speed increase is incredibly useful for anything and everything. Need to reach Hale, a health pack, a teammate? It's done faster and at zero cost since Pyro dies from one hit from Hale anyways, regardless of that 20% damage vulnerability. Even if you have it out while Saxton slams you, resulting in more damage taken in, you can always hit Hale and get health back. A strikingly similar strategy to the Eyelander, although certainly not as strong as just using the actual sword. And then we have these two oddballs. Huh. Quite peculiar these are. In the grandest of technicalities, the Volcano Fragment is a direct upgrade to stock, dealing a total of 236 damage with his Afterburn overtime compared to stock's direct 195. This assumes you'll only hit Hale once with either weapon. Why am I spending so much time on this explanation though? Then we have the Hot Hand. Wall climbing with it is pretty funny. Outside of that though, it actually is a somewhat legit weapon to use to escape Saxton if he's not on fire, and if you run out of ammo for air blasts, and he's solely targeting you, so knocking him back with a melee won't do much. There was an attempt to justify using it, alright?
Demo man? Give way to full version man!
Demo frickin' sucks. Take what I said about Soldier and times it by 2. A projectile that's hard to hit Hale with, but is now heavily limited by range. Mobility that's not just largely tied to health available, but also arming time now, meaning no more quick escapes from Hale. A health pool that's just shy of being able to take a hit. And as for flexibility, Demo can only really ever focus on damage output and nothing else. His grenades suck, his stickies suck, he sucks. There's just nothing good about... Alright, let's back it up a little bit. Pure base Demo is bad. You'll be lucky to land pipes consistently and luckier if you land them when Hale isn't beelining straight towards you. Stickies are your base option for doing literally anything, but come at an immense cost. For starters, there's actually aiming them. Sticky spamming is heavily restricted in range compared to rocket spam. You have to be close to Hale and be able to predict where he's walking, but not too close so that he targets you. There's little you can do to escape him if he does turn your attention to you, outside of hoping you can fire stickies fast enough to jump out of there or knock him back. Sticky traps do have the potential to deal massive damage to Hale, but follow through some of the same issues. You have to hope Hale actually walks through them, rather than around them. If you do hit him, you better hope it's enough to send him straight into the sky too, since there's nothing stopping him from just walking up and hitting you now too. Placing down a trap also means you can't sticky jump away without detonating the trap itself, making you an easy target to pick off. I try to avoid this by always having at least one sticky good to go if I need to make a quick escape, primarily when using the Scott's resistance. Most of the time though, you'll either be reloading or waiting. Both are boring. Here's a word I won't say again with Demo: support stickies. Want to deal a lot of damage and defend teammates? Stack your stickies on top of a heavy or sentry and watch as you not only hurt Hale, but save the life of a teammate too. Demo Knight though is where Demo really shines. I'd argue it's the best and most consistent way to get lots of damage on Hale while still having tons of survivability. Demo Knight has 200 HP wearing the booties, allowing him to take a hit from Hale. On top of that, his shields also block a single free hit, including super punches. As he'll be up close and personal with Hale, the knockback you deal will often be enough to save you from a second hit, allowing you to escape to get health, or in some cases, heal from Hale directly. Your mobility is also extremely high. With a shield, it's extremely easy to charge and chase after Hale, especially with the slight movement speed boost you get from wearing boots. The fact you don't have to awkwardly crouch down to hit the ground with the sword means you can keep most of your momentum for melee wall climbing to close the distance or make distance away from Hale. The immense range combined with the free 195 damage crit hit makes swords an extremely powerful weapon. Plus all the passive effects you get upon hitting Hale too. Saxton typically gets swarmed with Scots trying to shank him every several seconds. Primary weapons, who cares, they all suck, with the exception of the loose cannon. Its innate knockback and double donks makes it extremely easy to push and knock Hale around, with allowing you to save a teammate or yourself while still dealing decent damage. If you plan on using some sort of hybrid knight loadout, use the loose cannon. As for sticky bomb launchers, if you want to maximize your damage through traps, use the Scottish resistance. Make sure you play by your team though, since you're pretty easy to pick off alone. Wouldn't even bother with the quickie bomb launcher though. By the time you charge it up to deal maximum damage, Hale's either killed you or jumped away. The lack of traps is another massive downside. Just stick to stock. As for shields, just use the Tide Turner. You'll only get so much use out of them due to the fact Hale knocks them off quite quickly in rounds, and shield bash damage and shield resistances mean nothing. The Tide Turner though does allow full turning control. Combine that with the melee wall climb, and it makes traveling vertically and horizontally to Hale a lot easier. Yes, here comes the main meat, the melees. Despite how dominating demo swords are though, there is some practical use for the bottle. In normal demo loadouts where your damage comes from stickies rather than your melee, having to draw and holster a sword simply takes way too long. If Hale runs towards you, the best chance of escape you have after sticky jumping away is to switch to your melee and either wall climb or knock him back. You can't do that with a sword easily. You've probably heard demos say,
Wait, will I wall climb higher with my caber?
and this is technically true. For the first hit, anyways. After the caber explodes, though, it's useless. The 100% slower switch to speed, although not as severe thanks to the universal faster melee deploy found in versus Saxton Hale, still takes too long to be of use in a pinch. The Pain Train. I know where you live. At long last, we've arrived at Spy's Knives, but big. Demo swords are easily one of the strongest weapons in the game, with two in particular standing out on a league of their own. But before we get to the golden gods, we have to look at the losers. The Claymore only works with a shield, which don't really last too long in this game. After the shield is gone, you're left with a sword that makes you take 50% more damage, killing you in one hit and making you even more vulnerable to slams and charges. The same thing can be said about the Persian Persuader. Once your shield is gone, you can't charge at all, and it makes no difference on how many ammo packs you pick up. I'm not a big fan of the Scotsman Skullcutter, but it actually does have a somewhat viable niche choice. A choice overshadowed completely by two much better and stronger weapons, but hey, it can still work. If your definition of working looks like Grandpa Joe from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. High damage means high knockback, only issue is that movement speed penalty. If you plan on bunkering down in a single area, it's not that big of an issue, but the moment you need to move, you're screwed. Now, there are two intellectual schools of philosophy and thought with these last two swords. Long term or short term. The half Zatoichi excels in the short term. This massive health back on hit means you can go toe to toe with Hale for a while, getting enough overheal to afford a couple mistakes here and there. The only problem is when you're fighting an experienced Saxton Hale player who knows how to bait out swings, or a Hale that's committed to killing you. The damage you'll take will eventually be enough to overwhelm you, and with no shield or sticky to escape, Hale will hunt you down. Thankfully, the Eyelander solves that issue by focusing on the long term. Hitting Hale grants you a head and heals you for 15 HP. The health back on hit isn't enough to sustain you in the long drawn out fights like the half Zatoichi can, but it is just enough to survive a hit. The more heads you have, the more health and movement speed you have as well, allowing you to almost always outrun Hale if you need to bail. Combined with the melee wall climb, it is extremely easy to juke out Hale until you reach a medkit, medic, or dispenser, allowing you to reach full HP just to dive back into the fight until you take another hit and repeat the process. If you're a versus Saxton Hale beginner, I highly recommend just taking the half Zatoichi. It's a lot simpler, and the instant effects require less game sense and knowledge to make use of. Comparatively, if you're a versus Saxton Hale veteran, I recommend the Eyelander, allowing you to stay in the fight even longer as long as you know what you're doing.
Are you really the strongest man on your type?
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Heavy is the worst class in versus Saxton Hale. Originally, I would have said Sniper until I realized that Heavy not only has the same issue Sniper has, but has them 10 times worse. Sniper, Soldier, and Stock Demo sorta suck in this game mode, but still have shots at success. They're inconsistent in their success, but they still have something. Cannot say the same for Heavy. His damage output from range is too little, forcing you to get closer to Hale to hurt him, but although he does have the health to take a hit, doesn't have the escape potential to avoid a second hit like Demo, Soldier, or Spy. So you can't play close to Hale, so we're back to shooting from afar, but if you're gonna pepper spray Hale from a range for free damage, you'd be better off just playing Sniper, dealing more damage, and doing it from an even safer distance. He relies way too much on teammates to get the bare minimum done, needing a medic and pyro for survivability, a sniper and scout for damage, and a soldier, demo, or engineer for escape potential. His main way of dealing damage, the miniguns, are way too much of an investment to work as well. You have to immediately swap off the moment you think Hale is coming for you just to even get the slimmest chance of escaping him. Otherwise, you die. And as such, you'll either die having dealt 37 damage, or survive an entire round dealing 10. Hilariously, I think Heavy's health and heft is the real hassle. Being hit by Hale isn't as bad for Heavy when strictly looking at the damage. 105 HP is a decent amount to have after being punched, certainly better than 5, but Heavy has innate knockback resistance, which means he won't go anywhere after being hit, except to the grave, of course.
You are dead! Not a big surprise!
As for weapons though, the Huolong Heater requires too much ammo to be of actual use as a gun, and you get no benefit from the Ring of Fire. The Natasha has a significantly reduced chance of 50% to proc its slowdown on Saxton. You can try stacking heavies with it to boost its effectiveness ever so slightly, but you'll still need other teammates to deal the real damage in that match. The Brass Beast is an all or nothing weapon. It just takes too long to holster and deploy, so it's not even worth trying to run from Hale with it. Just stand your ground and commit to shooting him. You'll 1000% die, but you might get a couple hundred damage out of it at least. The Tomislav is easily the strongest minigun. Its tighter spread means you can actually deal a lot better damage from afar, and the faster spin up time means you don't have to commit to being slow, giving Heavy some much needed mobility in this game mode. The stock minigun, like all other miniguns mentioned prior, suffer from a negative 40% damage penalty, making them shoot out BBs rather than bullets. For secondaries, we have the shotguns, but come on. Who really cares about them? I do, obviously. Shame on you for thinking about that otherwise. I love talking about shotguns. I would never skip an opportunity to talk about them. Not even twice. Despite how much of a meme fat scouting is, it actually is pretty viable in versus Saxton Hale and does try to fix a myriad of mistakes with the minigun. They allow Heavy to still shoot at Saxton without making him as slow as a snail, and instead of having to commit to dying in a blaze of glory with a minigun, you can actually swap to a shotgun, relocate, and then swap back when Saxton isn't looking directly at you. I've only really played around with the panic attack before due to its faster switch speeds, which makes it an extremely valuable shotgun for this, and another tactic we'll touch on soon, but the stock shotgun and family business are also fine choices, I find. For lunchbox items, they all sort of work. The sandwich and second banana works to keep teammates alive from Saxton slams and even punches in certain cases, but should rarely, if ever, be eaten by you. The taunt just takes way too long and allows for an easy follow-up kill. The Deloka's bar is also similar, acting as a stronger safeguard when shooting Saxton. Both it and the Buffalo Steak sandwich do run into problems with when should I use them? You can't exactly use them offensively since Heavy can't chase Hale and they take too long to eat to be used defensively when Hale is near, so when should you use them? That's why shotguns are generally better 90% of the time. Heavy's melees are probably the best weapons in this entire arsenal. That might sound impressive, but in the grander scheme of things, they still suck. The KGB gives crits upon hitting Hale, pairing quite nicely with shotguns for massive and quick damage. The slow firing speed of Heavy's slow movement speed makes it even more difficult to escape Hale though, either through knocking him back or wall climbing. The GRU is great for mobility and escaping Hale, but be careful for how long you have them out. You're extremely vulnerable to Saxton Hale's AoE attacks like his slam or super punch. The Warrior Spirit is an extremely strong offensive choice with decent survivability. The 30% damage increase effectively means Heavy has 210 health, just enough to tank a hit. If you're skilled enough to hit Hale 4 times without getting hit yourself, you're golden with the bare fist. Although, now that I say it out loud, I realize how much of a task that is. The Fist of Steel! Why? Just why? I see the eviction notice getting a lot of praise, and granted, it is a solid melee choice for heavy. Its faster movement speed and swing speed makes it an overall better Gru. Of course, you shouldn't really commit to using this as an actual weapon, but as an escape tool. Rapidly docking Hale away and using the movement speed increase to run away or rapidly climb up walls. The health drain it has makes it unreliable for long drawn out fights. Like I said, a solid weapon choice on heavy. This entire weapon concept is just completely outclassed by the Islander. Heavy's true saving grace of a weapon is the Holiday Punch. This is legitimately the only thing Heavy has going for him. Being the only other non-spy melee weapon that doesn't have crits by default means you have to play as a pseudo-spy, hitting Hale in the back to stun him. Stunning Saxton can be huge. It allows snipers to land easy headshots, spies easy backstabs, trolgers easy gardens, and everyone else to just dogpile on Hale, resulting in massive damage being done. The best part is that to prevent stun locks, Hale will automatically stomp as the stun ends, pushing everyone nearby away to safety at the cost of some health. This is the one thing Heavy does that's actually useful and can't be done by any other class.
You're not so smart now, cowboy.
Although requiring significant setup time, Engineer can be a real hassle for Hale, dealing severe damage with sentries, supporting with dispensers, and even escaping with teleporters. The fact you only risk your buildings and not your life means you can also freely leave the battle and watch from afar as your buildings do all the work, persisting even if you do die. Even if Hale has a 50% damage resistance to sentries, they still eat away at his health incredibly quickly, and a whole beehive of engineers poses one of the biggest problems Hale will have to handle, leaving him hurt badly. Of course, while Engineer's buildings are great, Engineer himself pales in comparison, leaving him extremely vulnerable to Hale if you're not careful. Sentry guns, as mentioned before, are one of the toughest foes Hale will have to deal with. A level 1 sentry, although looking weak and often ignored by Hale, still fires fast enough to have decent damage output, and of course, it only gets stronger by upgrading it. A level 3 sentry, with its whopping 216 health, is not only capable of tanking a hit from Hale, but easily capable of preventing it outright thanks to its knockback. Just be careful of Saxton's charge attack, as it will hit buildings every tick they're caught in it, rapidly dwindling down its health. The mini sentry is much like the level 1. It doesn't hit all that fast or hard, but its small profile typically means it's free to sit there and build up damage, all while Hale ignores it. The cheaper cost also means you'll be able to place a dispenser down right away too, or rebuild a second mini in case the first one is destroyed, if you'd like to place them a lot more aggressively. Dispensers are perfect for supporting people who survive the punch or slam and can't risk going out in the open for a medkit. There aren't a lot of ammo packs on any of the vs. Saxton Hale maps either, and the ones that do exist are typically fairly far from the action. Dispensers make it a lot easier for classes to stay in the fight without needing to walk off to get ammo. Sticking together is always better. Finally, there's teleporters, perfect for making a quick escape. Personally, I like to place my teleporter exit somewhere secluded, far away from where anyone would look, and then my entrance right in the middle of everyone in case they need a quick getaway. Of course, you could be a lot more selfish and have it all for yourself, leaving the moment you think Hale is coming after you. Or you could use teleporters for what is instantly one of the most powerful attacks in the game, a telefrag. All of Engineer's weapons are fairly one-to-one. Stock works as expected, mainly being used to chip damage in from afar or get a couple last hits in. The Widowmaker expanding on that and making Engineer a lot more aggressive by being closer to Hale to really function. The Frontier Justice can receive revenge crits, as your buildings will gain an assist after dealing 300 damage. Still, it doesn't really do a whole lot and is more like a final resort to get damage in via crits rather than anything useful. The Thompson, I haven't bothered with it, to be honest. For all I know, it could just one-shot Hale. The Rescue Ranger is by far the most used Engineer primary weapon though. Its ability to heal buildings from afar means you won't risk dying to Hale yourself. Being able to also grab your buildings from afar the moment they are about to be destroyed means you won't have to worry about resetting back up and can harass Hale for even longer. For secondaries, there's really only one choice: the Wrangler. Saxton punches through the sentry's bubble shield, which might make it seem worthless, but the benefit of infinite range and a faster firing rate means you can hit Hale from further away and keep him off your sentry for a lot longer. The pistol can work, but only if you plan on playing aggressively, primarily with mini sentries. Its fast firing rate allows it to push Hale back with help from mini crits while having a decent damage output. I don't know, if 20 engineers stack together and build 20 level 3 sentries, maybe Hale will throw his PC out, giving you a projectile to delete with the short circuit. The Jag should always be your go-to wrench. Engineer is weak without his buildings and thus needs to set up and upgrade them as fast as possible. It's literally built for that. Its faster swing speed also means it's easier to climb walls with, allowing you to build in much harder to reach locations too. And as a final resort, that swing speed with the crits could knock Hale back and around just enough to allow you to escape. The Eureka effect is ideal if you like to play as a coward. The main con of using teleporters as an escape option is that they're glowing and a big arrow points to where the exit may be. Smart Saxons know this and can use it to find you, all alone, without any teammates or buildings to help you. The Eureka effect, however, makes that teleporting a lot easier. Just make sure you try to teleport sooner rather than later due to that long taunt animation. I already mentioned the usage of the mini sentry before, but the gunslinger's extra health combined with the overheal of a medic does allow you to tank a hit from Hale, making it even more ideal for being on the front line. And then we have the Southern Hospitality, which is actually technically better than stock. Not by much, but it is. The fire damage vulnerability and no random crits means literally nothing in this game, so you just have free bleed on hit. Not like you'll get much use out of it, but hey.
Stop healing and face me like a man!
As much praise as I give to Demo Knight and Engineer, they both pale in comparison to the sheer strength of Medic. I don't even mean as a support class either, even though Overheal is incredibly strong, allowing classes that wouldn't survive a punch from Saxton to survive. Medic is an incredibly strong and dangerous combat class too. He may not get the quick combo hits like Demo Knight can, but over the course of a match you'll quickly build up a ton of damage without any survival problems from Saxton, like a smash shield or destroyed dispenser. So what makes Medic so good? Two things: a damage resistance and a damage immunity. Medic passively has a 30% damage resistance to all of Hale's attacks. So while he is a 150 HP class going up against a 195 damage attack, you'll only be hit for 106 damage. Combine that with Medic's passive health regen, and as long as you can stay away from Saxton for a bit, you'll always be fine. Even if you can't manage to get away in time though, you'll always have Uber. The Uber Saw is the only melee weapon you'll ever use because of how busted it is. Providing 50 Uber on hit compared to 25 and doubling the rate at which Uber builds, so instead of 40 seconds, it only takes 20. Anytime you feel threatened by Hale, just pop Uber. If by some chance you don't have Uber at all you have to do is hit Hale twice. Something extremely easy to do when you recall Medic can take a punch at full health and your melee range is increased when near Hale. From there, your Uber can be used to save a teammate, yourself, or comboed into to more Uber Saw hits to deal even more damage and be Ubered for even longer. All while Saxton can do nothing to stop it. Uber can also be used to waste Saxton's Super Punch, saving the life of another teammate and making it safer to approach Hale. Medic is easily the strongest support role in the game, obviously, but he's still a surprisingly decent damage dealer. The only real downside is how bad Hale wants to brutally bash his head in, so expect to be focused a lot more. Still, you have all the tools available to save yourself from Saxton. The main two primaries you can use are the Overdose, expanding on your escape potential even more thanks to the speed you gain, and the Crusader's Crossbow, helping to heal teammates from afar. Personally prefer using Crusader's Crossbow mainly for the burst heal, allowing to quickly heal injured people before Saxton can land a second hit, while also dealing more damage than the Overdose, especially with the distance and range it has. The Blutsauger can work, but it's just very inconsistent. You have to take damage and be on low HP, but not too low to risk dying before you get back to full health through leeching off of Hale. The Mediguns, on the other hand, are all tailored to different playstyles, and they all have their own unique traits. If you prefer to play support, making sure everyone is healthy and alive and maximizing the amount of people who can take a punch, use the quick fix. This overheal penalty means lighter classes won't be able to take a punch with your support, but it does mean that they don't have to worry about slams and charges as much. Its Uber can also be extremely helpful with keeping you and your tankier teammates alive, like Heavy, against Hale. The faster Uber buildup means you'll typically be safe from Saxton's attacks too, aside from his super punch, that one's so capable of killing you. The mirror blast jumping also exists, but it's not really of much use. At best, maybe you can get a soldier to rocket jump you away from Hale when you're not by a wall, but wall climbing is always there for vertical heights. The crit Skreeg is high risk, high reward. The lack of survivability from not having Uber or quick healing means you have to be extremely careful near Hale. However, the payoff of 8 seconds of crits is extremely powerful, especially when you get it every 16 seconds with the Uber Saw. The crit Skreeg works best early in the matches, but falls off the less players you have. If you get to be the last alive, it's completely worthless. It's possible for Medic to clutch and kill Hale solo with Uber, but without it, good luck. The stock Medigun is by far the most practical though, as mentioned before. Uber keeps everyone alive regardless of health from Hale, and being able to deny and block super punches is a godsend. It's technically the slowest to build charge, but that doesn't mean much. Uber chaining is an incredibly safe way to get damage in, and frankly, it's disgusting how easy it is for 2 good medics to completely dominate the game. The Vaccinator supposedly negates the damage dealt by Saxton's abilities, but I ain't really falling for that. It's just better to have a Medigun that properly counters Hale's normal attacks and abilities, rather than just his abilities alone. Seriously, if they wanted you to use it, there wouldn't be a voice line for it.
You know there's no melee resistance on that thing, right?
No!
Sniping's a good job, mate, but not good enough.
Originally, I thought Sniper was the weakest class. Most of the stuff that made Sniper good in the plugin version of vs. Saxton Hale was removed in the VScript version. The smaller, much more compact maps mean Sniper has less range to work with, allowing Hale to reach him faster. Hitting Hale doesn't deal that much damage, nor does it outline him, meaning Sniper can't really build up damage nor know when Hale is coming to him. Everyone now has access to wall climbing now, which sorta trivializes where Sniper would set up from. And there's also a myriad of weapon balance changes not present in VScript that really hurt Sniper. Prime example being the Razorback not blocking a hit from Hale and the SMG not being mini crit boosted. Despite all the negatives though, Sniper still has one of the highest damage potentials in the game. Typically you want to average around 1000 damage in a match due to how Hale's health grows with player count. If you get more than that, great. Classes like Demo, Spy, and Medic typically average around the 2k damage mark, my personal best with Spy being 6k, but even that pales in comparison to the damage done as Sniper. The problem with Demo, Medic, and Spy is that you're actively fighting Hale. You need to either bait him out for the hit, or he hits you. Sniper, on the other hand, sits in a corner of the map and freely fires away, building up damage without any problems. As such, my highest damage ever done, not just for the class, just ever, was 11k dealt by Sniper. Hale can be extremely hard to hit. He runs fast, he jumps around a lot, and even if by some actual miracle of God he decides for whatever reason to not move around, your teammates will be knocking him around instead. And that's without even going into Hale's wonky hitbox. What makes Sniper even more beginner unfriendly though is how punishing Sniper is, even outside of aiming. Sniper has absolutely zero escape potential. Heavy can tank a hit which at least delays the inevitable, but Sniper has nothing. None of his weapons deal enough knockback, he walks too slow, and the only mobility tool he has is his melee wall climb. This makes Sniper kinda confusing on where you should snipe from. Being alone and far away from everyone makes it easier to shoot Saxton, but you're dead the moment he comes after you. Comparatively, sitting close to your teammates makes it easier to escape, but extremely difficult to snipe. If you can find the golden gray area, somewhere Hale won't notice you immediately and close enough to escape to your teammates, you can easily set up and fire away at Hale. Well, easy might be an understatement, you still need to aim. The easiest times to land hits are during Hale's charge, when he's completely immobile, immune to being knocked around, and will be like that for a couple of seconds, or at the apex of Hale's super jumps. When Hale gets caught on a building or Uward player, and whenever he's not jumping around like a kangaroo, also works very well. It takes a bit of time and effort to get used to how Hale moves around, but once you get into the groove of things, you'll easily rack up headshots and damage against him. Sniper only has two primaries that do something in this game mode, the Sydney Sleeper being the much more noticeable and common option. It charges fast, allowing for decent damage, doesn't need you to focus on landing headshots, and supports everyone else by coding Hale in Girardi, allowing everyone to deal mini crits. It's not that tremendous of a support weapon due to how hard it is to hit Hale in the first place, and how short the duration of Girardi really is, being at 5 seconds at the maximum. Still, if you land hits consistently, it's a solid support option. Then, there's the bizarre bargain. Requiring an immense amount of skill to hit Hale in the head, doing so rewards you with the obvious faster charge, allowing for more damage. Each head increases the charge rate, which increases the damage even more. It's a slow start, but once you start gaining heads, you'll be looking at a 450 damage body shot every single second. Dishonorable mention to the Huntsman, which is one of the worst non-melee weapons in the entire game. You give up Sniper's infinite range for a weapon that's harder to hit Hale with, that deals less damage. There's no upside to using it. It's terrible. Stop using it, please. For the love of God, I'm tired of seeing it. I beg of you. The Hitman's Heatmaker also builds focus meter upon hitting Hale. I wouldn't actually bother using it though, it's just I had to bring it up because it is a changed weapon stat. Sniper's secondaries are all either useless or negligible. The Razorback and Darwin's Danger Shield don't do anything in this game mode, and the Cleaner's Carbine is the Cleaner's Carbine. The Cozy Camper has some usage thanks to its passive health regen, saving you a trip to a medkit if you take fall damage, but its use to save you from Saxton slams or charges is really unlikely. If you're close enough to get hit by one of those, you're probably about to be punched anyways. Girardi can be a very powerful tool as mentioned before when talking about the Sydney Sleeper, but it requires you to be a tad bit too close to Hale for my liking. Certainly not bad if you're confident in your abilities, but still a risk. Then there's the SMG. Its decent range and high damage output makes it a much more reliable pistol. In certain cases, it even has the firepower to push Hale back, buying you some time. Most of the time though, it's mainly just used to hit Hale with something, rather than just standing around. As for melee weapons, just use stock. Every other upside that every other melee weapon carries is completely redundant or not in the game mode at all.
Look me in the eye, you coward!
In typical TF2, Spy is a high-risk, high-reward class. It takes a lot of skill to get behind someone and blend in without getting caught, and the reward of an insta-kill on a key target more than makes up for it. In versus Saxton Hale, however, there's almost no risk at all. The sole difficulty lies in getting directly behind Hale as he's constantly running and jumping around. If and when you do manage to land the stab on Saxton though, you'll be rewarded with a huge amount of damage. Being able to chain several stabs back to back is by far the fastest way to build up damage. You would think that Spy's frail 125 HP would make getting close to Hale risky and dangerous, but as long as you can play the game 2 seconds ahead of Saxton, you'll live. Really, the biggest problem Spy faces in this game are his teammates, knocking Hale out of prime stab spots or swarming Saxton so much that you can't hit him at all. Conversely, without teammates though, there's nobody to distract Hale and it becomes much more challenging to sneak up and stab him. And in the final free, the mini crit aura instantly reveals Spy while invisible, making his invis watches practically useless. Spy's revolvers functionally work the same as Scout's pistols or Sniper's SMG. They're really only used because shooting at Hale is better than doing nothing. The revolvers do deal a serviceable amount of damage, more than the pistol and SMG, although at the cost of knockback and inaccuracy. The Diamondback gives you crits upon backstabbing Hale. This doesn't really do much for you though. Like, it's a nice quick bit of extra damage, but it isn't that sustainable or noticeable like the Frontier Justice's crits. The only revolver really worth using is the L'Étranger. The damage of the revolvers are okay, as mentioned before, but it's not what Spy is meant to do or use. Giving him a gun with some utility is for the best, especially with how often you'll be needing Cloak to survive against Saxton. Spy's knives are in a similar situation. Stock has no health penalty attached to it, which means that you can toughen out more of Hale's slams and charge attacks without worry, and if you do get hit with the Dead Ringer or while invisible, it gives you a lot more breathing room than compared to the Big Earner or Kunai, not needing to worry about fall damage and whatnot. There used to be a bug with the ear that allowed you to become Saxton Hale once you backstabbed him, giving you his incredible speed bonus. Of course, that bug was squashed completely, and the ear now serves as a really bad defensive knife. Stabbing Saxton will instantly disguise you as another class, so when he turns around after being backstabbed, instead of seeing a spy he'll want to kill, it'll be a heavy he wants to kill. Disguises don't really do much in versus Saxton Hale. At best, you can disguise as a scout and throw Hale off a little bit, but not much. With how often you'll be wall climbing to try and land sick trick stabs on Saxton, the disguise won't last long and reapplying it will now cost you your entire cloak meter. Spy's saving grace for surviving against Saxton. The Big Earner works much better as that defensive knife though, granting you full cloak meter and a short speed boost upon stabbing Saxton. The speed boost in cloak is perfect for getting away. Even if you manage to get caught, the cloak meter being full means you can tank the hit with the Invis Watch or Dead Ringer. The speed boost can also be used to chase after Hale as well, allowing you to get in a couple more successive stabs. But of course, we come to the King of Knives, the Kunai. 70 health is not a lot, and you can very easily be killed if you're not careful with your Invis Watches. Watch out for Saxton when he's in the air, as a single slam could be enough to kill you. Thankfully, that 70 HP can turn into 210 HP upon backstabbing Hale. Shouldn't have to explain why having more health than Soldier is good in this game mode, especially as a class that needs to be up close and personal with Hale. If you're really skilled, you'll be able to stab Hale, take a hit, stab him again, take another hit, and then finally run to safety 2k damage later. The Dead Ringer is the obvious go-to choice here. 75% damage reduction is massive, and you'll never really need to worry about it when the watch should be up. The short speed boost you receive when getting hit helps in putting distance between you and Saxton, and from there, you're free to get health and wait for the charge back up and make another attempt. It does come at the slight downside of not being able to go invisible on command, meaning hiding from Hale when already hit once isn't really that doable, nor sneaking directly up to him. The stock Invis Watch and the Cloak and Dagger requires some serious skill to use. The Dead Ringer is a very passive item to use, focused on minimizing damage. You can have it up at all time, only lowering it the moment you need to actually stab Hale. Comparatively, Stock and the Cloak and Dagger are a lot more active and aim to completely avoid taking damage at all. The moment you think Hale is about to target you, go invisible and avoid taking the hit completely. If Hale does manage to hit you, however, there's still a small damage resistance on Spy while Invis. It's nowhere near as massive as the 75% you get from the Dead Ringer, but it's just enough to take a hit from Hale. Taking no damage will always be better than taking some damage. However, the skill and ability needed to read and predict Saxton isn't something most Spy players are naturally comfortable with, requiring a bit of practice to get the full benefit of those two watches. With all the classes, tips, and tricks talked about, it's time we get to the tier list. Classes and subclasses are ranked based on their ability to deal damage to Saxton or support their team. In terms of damage, I gauge it off of how easy it is to get 1000 damage or more on them. When it comes to support though, it's a bit harder to get an easy answer, but I'm judging how impactful the support is over the course of a game. The views will be focused on all maps and based on around fighting an averagely skilled Saxton Hale player.
F tier, the Huntsman.
Hitting Hale with an arrow is next to impossible, and doing so doesn't provide any additional benefit to just hitting him with a sniper rifle. I said prior that you sacrifice snipers one saving grace in this game, range, for zero payoff. In terms of supporting the team, Girardi could be used. It's fairly decent, but puts you at even more unnecessary risk, requiring to be close to Hale to use.
D tier, heavy.
I hate to say it, but heavy just doesn't work in this game mode. The damage you do via spray and pray while Hale is miles away is outclassed by literally every other hit scan weapon, and when Hale gets up close, you either risk dying from Saxton nearly immediately, or are forced to retreat and sacrifice a huge chunk of potential damage. Heavy relies way too much on team support to get much done as well. Without a Pyro, Engineer, or Medic around, you won't be doing anything. There are some moments where Heavy does shine through, like with the Eviction Notice or KGB, but that's only if you ignore literally every other class and just keep your eyes on Heavy. The one shining grace Heavy has comes with the Holiday Punch and its unique ability to stun Hale, allowing for players like Spy, Demo Knight, and Soldier to build up big damage. Even then though, it's incredibly difficult and way too inconsistent to actually get the stun off, meaning you can't really format a strategy around it.
C-tier, Sniper.
Although Sniper can very easily become a top scorer against Saxton, easily securing several headshots while also providing decent support, I feel as if the only reason why I've done well as Sniper is due to how poorly played Hale was rather than any large impact on my part. 50 damage on hit with the odd headshot buffing that damage is tremendous over the course of the game, but that damage potential gets challenged the moment Hale makes his way over to Sniper, resulting in Sniper's death 90% of the time. In terms of supporting the team, although Girardi and the Sydney Sleeper provide extremely valuable mini-crits to everyone on the team, the actual duration of it feels very lacking. Especially when by using the Sydney Sleeper, you gimp your damage by being unable to score headshots, and Jiraiya forces you to be in the danger zone. Can't forget that Sniper is also extremely limited by map choice, Distillery being your best bet with Tiny Rock and Skirmish being a little bit more questionable, and then there's Nucleus.
C-tier, Soldier.
In a similar boat we have Soldier. While he has a lot of escape potential, his offensive and support powers are fairly limited. It's extremely difficult to hit Hale with rockets, resulting in typically low damage during matches, which also means it's hard to build up banner charge. The banners themselves, although providing amazing benefits, are short-handed because they're stuck on Soldier rather than on Hale. Imagine thinking you have 60% damage resistance and it just goes away without warning. It doesn't help that what Soldier does do is done better by Demo and Spy. There's some other limits the Soldiers use, such as maps similar to Sniper. Big open areas like Distillery and most of Skirmish are great, but the closed corridors really hurt him hard. Rocket jumping is questionable in this game mode. Melee wall climbing I consider to be a lot more practical and without any health costs, just overall better. It's made especially worse though when you realize that Hale can very easily hit you while airborne with his abilities, making it so you can possibly die from fall damage. It's still okay for horizontal travel, but the vertical aspect is questionable.
C+ tier, Demo.
Demo runs into the same problems as Soldier though, being limited range, hard to hit projectiles, and the added caveat of absolutely horrible escape potential. The one saving grace Demo does have over Soldier though is with stickies. Stickies have the potential to deal massive amounts of damage to Hale, but they are obviously set back by the fact Hale needs to walk over them for it to work. Thankfully, there are certain tips and tricks that more or less ensure Hale will have to at least get close to them, resulting in a decent chunk of damage being dealt. The loose cannon helps in saving people or yourself by stalling out Hale and is capable of dealing decent damage a lot more consistently than Soldier's rocket launchers as well. While Soldier and Sniper are largely inconsistent due to map selection and Saxton's skill level, Demo is inconsistent because his damage output is passive. You can't really attack Hale, you just gotta wait for Hale to stumble across your stickies.
B tier, Scout.
While Scout's damage is laughable, seriously even heavy will out-damage him on average, the sheer escape and support powers he has more than makes up for his lacking damage. Mad Milk is a godsend for keeping people alive through Hale's abilities. The Fan of War increases damage taken against Hale for a considerably longer period of time compared to the Sydney Sleeper, making its effect actually noticeable and felt. The Sandman, although very easily countered by someone with enough time and skill in the game, is still immensely powerful in stopping Saxton for several seconds, allowing for immense potential. Bonk can be used to counter Hale's most powerful ability, his Super Punch, even if it is gimmicky and sort of outclassed by Uber or the Deadringer. Combine all that with Scout's massive mobility, and Hale will typically always be under the effects of Scout's support. There are plenty of support options available for Scout to use, and they all work pretty good. It's just a shame that there are other classes that provide stronger support while also dealing damage dealers.
B tier, Pyro.
Pyro is yet another support-based class that is actually capable of dishing out some decent damage with some support and help. Being able to air blast Hale or stun him for a second with a squirt shot completely shuts down several of Hale's abilities, primarily his slam. The damage he deals is low, especially when you're forced to be extremely close to Hale to do anything of substance, but it isn't impossible to get 1,000 damage off of him, just challenging. The Flog also does make it easier for Pyro to solely focus on his damage output, and although it may seem impressive while using it, it's really not that much damage in the grand scheme of the game, and requires a bit too much support and skill to really make it worthwhile. Air Blast is great for saving yourself and others from hail, but it's not something you should fully rely on, as it will eventually fail you.
A- tier. Trollger.
Trollger requires a significant amount of skill and ability to properly play and pull off. But once you get into the groove of the game, you'll easily be dealing thousands of damage. Comparing Trollger to Spy, however, does show some issues with the subclass. For starters, the damage scaling is not the same for some reason, or at least it certainly doesn't seem to be the same. On average, in a full game of 23 people on red, a Market Garden will deal around 750 damage, while a backstab will be just shy of 1000, typically around 950. Trollger is heavily limited by when and where he can successfully perform a rocket jump into a garden, while Spy can backstab hail whenever. Trollger doesn't have any tools to actually negate or prevent any possible mistakes or issues like getting too close to hail or getting hit by his abilities, unlike Spy, who has plenty. So while Trollger's damage output is immense and only rivaled by one other class, the lack of sustainability he has to reliably keep himself in the game, in addition to map choice, lowers his placement just a tad.
A tier. Engineer.
Difference between Battle Engineer and Normal Engineer is fairly minor. Battle Engie sees you risk your life by forcing you to place disposable mini-sentries near the front where hail is most likely going to kill you, but with the added bonus of guaranteeing you'll get some actual damage and use out of your sentry. Having your dispensers and teleporters near the front where people will be fighting hail also means Battle Engineer's supportive powers are felt a lot more than Normal Engineer. You'll need to play a lot more careful, however, as if you don't really have any way to support yourself if Saxton chooses to target you. You give up safety and security with the risk of being able to deal more damage. Engineer has a lot of drawbacks that are thankfully covered by extremely powerful upsides. For starters, an Engineer without a sentry is typically dead. Engineer is nothing without his buildings, unfortunately, and the time it typically takes to set up buildings means you'll be at an immense risk until you get them up. He sucks early game, but he makes up for it in the late game. Sentries are capable of denying hail access to a large area of the map, knocking him back all while building up immense damage. They can be countered and destroyed somewhat easy based on their position, but as long as Engineer can get away, he can very easily rebuild it all back. Playing defensively and offensively works extremely well, and Engineer's access to dispensers makes him an extremely strong support character. The drawbacks are easily countered by the immense upsides in this scenario.
A tier. Spy.
Spy's damage potential is by far the highest in versus Saxton Hale. Backstabs deal a solid chunk of Hale's health and provide immense benefits to Spy that further boosts his power. The only real downside Spy has is that the less players there are, the less effective he becomes as opportunities to backstab Hale dwindle and die out, while your team also dies out. Revolvers provide decent damage or utility to further benefit Spy as well, and the introduction of melee wall climbs means you'll always have the opportunity to trick stab or catch up to Hale too, as long as you have the Dead Ringer and Kunai equipped. You're guaranteed to be the last three surviving members of your team, while other classes like Trollger or Sniper get partially countered by the skill level of Saxton, either by prioritizing the classes or just being more aware of them. Hale can't really guarantee being aware of Spy, nor be sure that he ever truly killed him, as long as there isn't a mini crit aura on him. I'm tempted to bump Spy up to A+ tier, but I'll surrender that the amount of skill needed to successfully play Spy might be a bit too much to warrant that.
S tier. Demo Knight.
Yeah, this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Demo Knight, even after his nerf, is still extremely strong, being one of the few classes who is actually quite comfortable being beside Hale, and for good reason. The extra mobility and range means you can easily escape or catch up to Hale, and the immensely powerful benefits you receive upon hitting him sustains Demo extremely well. A lot of people think that Demo Knight is terrible once his shield disappears, but really, the shield just exists to ensure you get the first hit in. After that, you're looking at a free 1000 damage. High mobility, and high survivability, Demo Knight is the top tier choice for solo players.
S tier. Medic.
But of course, there's still Medic, and this should also not be a surprise to anyone either. Medic is not only the premier support class, allowing classes to tank hits from Hale and survive against his abilities, but he is an incredibly strong fighter too. Seriously, switching between the Ubersaw and the stock Medigun essentially cancels out all of Hale's entire strategy for fights and forces him to run away until it wears off. Medic's passive regen combined with his passive damage resistance means that as long as you can get the first hit in, you'll be perfectly fine for the fight. While both Medic and Demo Knight share this high-end survivability, Demo Knight does fall a bit short whenever Hale has his Super Punch charged and ready. Without a shield, Demo can't do anything to survive against that. Medic, on the other hand, can. Generally, I would say Demo Knight is a lot more consistent to play with, but Medic has a much greater potential. And that's that. The entire V-Script versus Saxton Hale tips, tricks, and tier list all done in a precedingly record amount of time. There's a solid chance the game mode has gone through a balance change by the time I've recorded, edited, and released the video, in which case I'll probably make a correction blip somewhere in the comments down below. I want to clarify as well that, although one class may be S tier, if you don't have a well-rounded, balanced team composition, Saxton will shred through you like paper. The current skill level of the game mode is also rather all over the place. Some people, such as myself, have been playing both the plugin and VScript version of Saxton Hale for nearly 10 plus years, while others are just experiencing it for the first time ever. Combine that with how Saxton Hale is essentially TF2's 10th class, and it'll take some time before you can play matches with an average skilled Saxon. You know, one that doesn't try super jumping by holding crouch still.